I don't, won't let me open it because I'm still converting the last meeting. There's some folks in there. Yeah. No, we can see the light at the end of the tunnel. No problem. We're good. I mean, this is the most informal.
Yeah.
Marina, just check in if we're good to get started.
I don't know if we need it. There's only online. You can go ahead and get started too, if you want to just kick it off.
Awesome. Yeah, we can do that. Hopefully there's nobody in the other meeting invite. So this particular session is very informal. My suspicion is that you all have been to one of the sessions previously that we've had today. This hour is dedicated to any questions you all may have. Bianca did put in the chat that if you want to ask a question, go ahead and raise your hand and she'll unmute you, or you can type it in the chat. So I'm going to open up the floor for in-person or online for any questions you all may have.
No questions here yet too. We do have one. Hold on one second.
On the screen that you showed us that when in CSUBUY, and it had the accounting codes, business unit, fund department. The account was not filled in.
Correct.
And I just wanted to know, are all of those required? Can someone submit? We don't need program, class, or project unless there's a combo edit.
Correct.
That requires them.
So account is required for this. We just had it set up and not. So when we were going through like PR validation through test, it's not just constantly failing on us.
Yeah.
Typically, we're working on having those tied together with the commodity codes. We're going through a process of doing that.
Okay.
Tu could talk a little bit more about who we're working with, but there is a process going on right now to make sure those tied to the correct commodity codes. Doing some updating of the commodity codes as well. make sure that they're reflected correctly. I think they're making some changes to some of them as well to narrow down the list where there's hundreds to make it easier to select the correct one. 2, jump in, tell us, stop me if I'm saying anything wrong, but in production, you will see this where it will have something and it is required as well.
Yes.
And even in UAT, you will see it as it's reflected. This is just
Okay,
being
we'll
like
see it
our
while we're testing.
development.
Yeah, and I can talk. You're saying everything correctly, Robert. So you're good there. So I'm going to talk through that process a little bit, so you all have an understanding on how that's getting populated. So with the P2P implementation, we are going to a common commodity code list. Right now it's about 80 codes. However, we are working with the Chancellor's Office accounting team to confirm, to ensure that we can link the new commodity codes to let me step back. So the UNSPSC code, if it's from a catalog, or the forms linked to a commodity code, which then will be linked to a campus-specific account code. Now, the campus-specific account code is going to be populated based on the centralized FOC code that is recommended by central accounting at the CO. So we are working with them right now to validate that list. So that way, once we can confirm what the FOC code will be, that will be the pivot for our campuses to say, okay, if the recommendation is this particular number, then our campus corresponding account number will be this. So that's the work that's being done right now.
Ah, thank you.
Okay, my question is on payment type. So if somebody went in and started a request and they want to use their Pro card, how does that work here?
So in the new P2P implementation, we will not be paying via P card. It will only be utilizing chart fields in P2P. However, Marina, I'm going to punt this to you. There is still going to be a notion of P cards, just not in the new instance. Marina, can you talk to your P card program on your campus?
Okay, I'm kind of unclear yet on how that's supposed to work. I mean, I know it's outside the system, but currently when they order through the marketplace, it creates a requisition. So how will that work once we're fully implemented with P2P?
So once we're fully implemented in P2P, there is no P card input. It's just chart field. So the question I'm punting to you is, will your campus still have the P card program outside of CSUBUY?
Oh, yeah, because there's still a lot of vendors outside of the catalog that we would need to make purchases from. There's still some local vendors that we would need to make purchases from, but I do understand that our P card program will probably decrease as to how it's currently being used.
Thanks, Marina. Robert, if there's no questions in the audience, there is a question in chat that I can share.
Yeah, you can. Yeah, we have one after that.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Oops, sorry. When I started reading the question, another one came in. So let me read the first one from Brittany. What initiates payment of the PO? Will there be confirmation process prior to payment to ensure items have been received and are correct? Okay, so let me talk through the vouchering process in CSUBUY. So once a PO has been created and a supplier invoices us for that good and services, there are multiple ways that invoice can come into the application. The first method is we'll be working with suppliers who will be enabled in the application to provide us with a CXML invoice. That's really a fancy word to mean that they provide us with a data file that creates the invoice within CSUBUY. So that's in an electronic format. The second way that a supplier can invoice us is by submitting the invoice through their portal. So through the registration process, they do create a profile, and they can actually go into their profile, pull up the PO, and key in the invoice. So that's another way that we will get the invoice. The third way is the current way, which is they submit a paper invoice to AP or the department that needs to be processed. So when that invoice comes in, and I believe you should be seeing CSUBUY, when that invoice comes in, depending on the PO and what the transaction is, and I'm logged in as Rocky, so hopefully, so I can see this about invoice for a PO that I created as Rocky. So when the invoice comes in, it does route for approval. So it will, if it's a three-way match item, so it's a product, it will stop to be received in CSUBUY, whether you all have central receiving, which I believe you do, or by an end user if you have that process. Once it's been received, then it will route to AP right here for approval. Now, if it's a service, it will route to the requester to confirm that services has been rendered before AP actually reviews and approves the voucher. Brittany, I hope that answers your question. Robert, I have one more if I can just tackle that before going back to the audience there. From Julie, when shopping using the shop section, is the requester able to filter by supplier type as well? For example, a requester wants to purchase recycled paper from a small business or local business. So Robert touched on this when he was going through some of the criteria, and I think he kind of brought it up in the last session. There is a feature in CSUBUY where we can create flags or supplier classes in the application to identify these various things. So we can identify that it is a local supplier, or we can identify that they are small business. So that's a functionality that is available and something we can look to ensure that we have for some of our suppliers. Julie, I hope that answers your question. Robert, I'm gonna punt it back to the audience where you're at.
Okay.
We have a form, a special services form that's used fairly often. I think people are all going to be paid now on direct pays. There's no longer going to be a special services. It was supposed to be used for one-time services, like someone coming to be a speaker, or I don't, athletics official or something, but there was no requirement for the 204 with it. I just wanted to confirm that there's no special services form in here. It's direct pay, and if they're or an independent consultant, but that is truly a consultant, right? With a contract.
Yeah, so I think that's Becky, right?
Yeah.
Becky, I'm gonna kind of break down your question into two different questions. So is there a specialty form that you're talking about? We don't have that. That might be Bakersfield specific. So the direct pay form currently mirrors the same functionality that exists amongst the CSU, which are for payments for goods and services that has already been rendered and just needs to be paid. In here, there are options that kind of, for the examples that you kind of brought up, that might fall into one of these categories. Now, if it is a guest speaker or I can't remember the other example you provided, but through some validation sessions that we've had amongst the 9 campuses, last summer and throughout the implementation thus far, those individuals should be processed as an independent contractor. Therefore, we have this, which will require them to complete a W-9 and go through this process.
Okay, thank you.
Two, could you or Robert explain the substitution feature for approvers? So if there's an approver that, you know, has an emergency or is out of the country, how that process would work?
Yep. Are you familiar with it in the system?
I might have to log in as Abby, so you might have to walk me through that really quick. So let me just go in as Abby, the approver. So to provide some context to Marina, if I'm an approver and I know I'm going to be out for a period of time, I can make somebody else an approver in my place. So Robert, can you walk me through how to get there?
Yep. So let me, I'm just pulling it up here. I don't have it off the top of my head. I apologize. There it is. So if you go to orders and then approvals, and then there's the assign substitute approvers. You could do it two different ways. There's requisitions and then there's like procurement requests. So you could click on that. And then from here, you can assign them. So you're able to assign. And if you're on any, so like for instance, that top one is Abby is an approver on that missing business unit step. You can also go through if you want somebody to do your PR approvals, you can have them as well. You can, when you set the assigner, you can also set it, or when you set the substitute approver, you are able to set a time frame as well. So if you know somebody's going on maternity leave, if I'm taking family leave for some reason, I can set it for a time window as well.
Does it restrict it to a certain level, like only like MPPs, or is it anybody?
So go ahead too.
I believe it's restricted to them having the approver role. So the
Correct.
designation of roles will live at the campuses. So we will be creating new roles for CSUBUY, and at your campus, you will maintain your existing process in assigning who has those permissions. So Marina, if your campus has a procedure in place that only MPPs are approvers, then you maintain that locally at your campus. We absorb the roles from CFS.
Great, thank you.
Mhm.
And I have gotten some questions in regards to additional reviews and approvals from others in departments, budget analysts and such. And could you kind of go into the determination on what the requirements were as this process was thought of from a system-wide aspect as to what were the requirements for determining the workflow and what the requirements for approvals from a requisition to purchase order?
So Marian, just make sure I understand, what are the driving factors for us to build the workflow the way that it is?
Yeah, because I thought we based it on like standardization, best practices across the CSU and not just specific to what current practice is for campuses, where there might be a current practice of having 10 approvers for a requisition before it hits procurement.
Correct. So our approach to developing the workflow is driven by policy. So if there is a compliant requirement amongst the 9 campuses, we do build those workflow steps. So as an example, IT purchases needs to go to IT for security and accessibility review. We built that workflow in place. So that's how we based most of ours is based on policy and best practice. Now, there are uniqueness to campuses approval processes. We do highly encourage the campus to align with the common workflow as much as possible, because that's built on policy. If there are situation where that needs to be reviewed because it is a unique campus policy, that's something we can work with the campus team with to identify if that needs to be included. So Maria, to your point, yes, it is built on policy and best practices, and we're trying to make it as common as possible.
Thank you.
I don't see other
think that's-
questions.
Yeah, we don't have any more questions out here. Anything in the chat? I see Julie had a little bit of a follow-up question. Noticed in the supplier section option to filter by type, but wasn't sure if that option was available if I search for something like paper. Can I only choose vendors in Bakersfield? At this time, no, there's no functionality to like search for paper and then say I only want ones within my area. So that's not functionality that Jagger currently offers today.
I have a question. Is there a way to block a supplier if a campus or multiple campuses have had major issues with them?
So as far as you don't want them available to your campus, yes, you can. We can have them removed from your campus. Yeah, that could be generated. I think we'd have to talk through like the policy, like the process of that a little bit more, but the campus supplier management can initiate that. And it's actually a pretty simple change within CSUBUY where we basically take Bakersfield out of their list of business units. And Julie looks like she has another question.
Hi, yes. My question is in the search field, the one that's on the very top where I could search a PO number. Is there a wildcard symbol I could use if I only know like part of the number? So like if I only know like the last 5 digits of the PO.
Yes,
something
actually
like that.
there is. If you put an asterisk at the end, it will generate everything within that that carries those. But also the way 2 is kind of shown it there, it will pull in the information there. The reason you're seeing that D16 and 17 is because they're tied to requisitions. But if you put in like just like 3 and then the asterisks, it will wild card and pull in everything within that string.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Are we going to be able to, my hand,
You're good.
are we going to be able to tell from a number, are direct pays going to have any differentiation between?
You notice the
the
D
D.
there.
I-
So we were
Yeah.
playing with that notion early on. It is possible. There is the filters on the left side where you can specifically say, I want to look at the direct pays. There's one like by form type, I believe it is too. Might be further down.
So I think because I'm in a kind of like a all search. So if I go to,
Yeah, you might have to look at requisition. Yes.
yeah. So if I go into requisition, there's flags that I can do. To your question, Becky, all POs for all campuses will form from the same number wheel. So there's no designation that looking at the first 2 digits, it's only Bakersfield. It will all be on the same number wheel. The difference that you will be able to see, which is in the example last time, is if it is a direct pay transaction, it will start with a D. But as Robert says, you can filter by other criterias here, but the most visible is that if it is a direct pay, it will start with a D.
Thank you. When we look up in on-base, we have to specify what kind of form we're looking for. Unfortunately, we can't just use a wildcard. So, thank you.
You're welcome. Oh, you in the back there.
The document numbers, will those pull over in CFS same way?
Yes.
Doc-
So the document numbers that you see in CSUBUY will be the same in CFS going forward. We're gonna have that similar naming mention. And Julie has a question about reference to contracts on POs.
Yes, if there's a contract that is being piggybacked on for a purchase, like E&I Cooperative Services, if they're not in this, if that contract's not in the system, is there a way to reference it, or does it need to get uploaded into the contracts module?
It needs to be available for us to associate to that contract.
Okay, and one more question. If there's a vendor has multiple contracts, will we have an option to search or select which contract should apply?
Yes, sorry. If it's
Okay.
tied to, if a supplier has multiple contracts that apply to that item as well, you are able to select it, which one is the correct.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much. And that's all my questions.
You're welcome.
Piggybacking off of Julie's question. So if you select it, will it pop up with the pricing so you can see like the price difference between both contracts to determine which is the best price?
I may have to look at that. So that's a good question. I'd have to pull one up for you to, yeah, that works. I know you get some, I was showing a little earlier, you get some information. I just don't remember if the pricing was part of that.
Next question, wire payment. So when the payment type is wire. So our current practice right now is we actually go to the bank, process the wire, then voucher. Because we need to put that payment information into CSUBUY. How does that work here?
Robert, you want me to take it?
Sure.
Okay. So we are not doing payments in CSUBUY. Payments is done in CFS. So I kind of want to put that out there first. When you are vouchering for I think vouchering normally happens for international suppliers. The payment method there, I think the campuses usually do is wires. So you would process the voucher in CSUBUY. Once it's been approved, then you would go into CFS or your existing payment process to create that wire. So I think that's Tina. Tina, if that was you,
Yes,
hopefully
it
that
is.
answered your question. I'm like a magician here.
Yeah.
But we won't be doing payments in CSUBUY. So whatever your wire process is now, it will exist, but the vouchering and approval for that particular invoice will happen in CSUBUY. Now, keep in mind, I think I also want to put it out there in case there's any misunderstanding. So in CSUBUY, it will only be transactions for true suppliers, those who invoice. So student, employee reimbursements, those types of transactions are outside of CSUBUY.
Yes. So when you say the transaction is approved, so it's an overnight process. It has gone into CFS. So it's an open voucher sitting in CFS waiting
For payment.
for payment.
Mhm.
And just like the requisitions have an approval, there could be some approvals on the voucher as well. That's when she means like it's approved, it went all the way through workflow, it completed, got all the necessary approval sign offs, exported out to CFS. And at that point, it becomes possibly payable if it hits that part. That's
Is
when
it-
the payment.
Is there any kind of tracking for that? What if, well, I guess it would go through AP, but we would know that.
Yeah, we do have some AP steps built in.
I believe AP is the last approver before the voucher goes to CFS.
I can look at that real quick, just to confirm that.
Yeah, I think we have like a robot afterwards to do validation, but I think AP is the last manual step.
Correct. Yep.
Another question. So we do our pay cycle every day. Will there be any kind of reporting as to what went into CFS for that week that we vouchering for us to run our pay cycle?
So I may kick this one to you because I know we're going through like we're doing some kind of evaluation as far as what reporting's possible in CSUBUY versus what needs to continue in CFS. We're trying to do like a fit gap analysis of that, but if it's this concern of what went specifically into CFS, you would have to most likely run a report in CFS to see what's gone in that last couple of days. We can say, what's completed workflow in this system to pull that up. And once it hits that completed step, the expectation is that export it out, but you'd most likely have to look in CFS, but.
Yep, you got it, Robert. So once voucher has been approved through workflow, it does go to CFS in seconds or a minute, if that. So we do recommend that CFS is the system of record. You run your reports there. You can do a quick search, right? And say, I want to see things that went through that was completed in the last week, and you can do a quick report like that, so you can look through it. But the recommendation is, if it's related to your payment process, that you do it in CFS.
Okay, we usually enter using control groups, batches. So it won't create any kind of control group for these specific items.
I'm not sure with the control group. You're talking about how it exports or?
Yes, so we actually have to create a control group before we can start vouchering. That's what opens up our module to be able to create a voucher.
Oh, gotcha. Yep, I believe I may have to take that back. I may have to take that one back to confirm that.
Yes, that's a CFS process that we're not familiar with. So Tina, if you can email me specifically that question, I can route it to the team who can help us answer it.
Okay, great.
I don't see any questions in chat.
Nothing here. All right, I think that's it. Thank you,
Awesome.
everybody, for attending. I'll say my last little part. Looking forward to rolling this out here for you guys in the future, and look forward to supporting you guys. And again, as Tu mentioned in the beginning, if there's questions, there is the form that you guys can fill out, routes those questions directly to the P2P team, and we could take those on as well. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.